Now, on the behalf of EduBridge IAS, I welcome you all. I am Nitish Sharma. Now, we will be discussing the doctrines and new. Four doctrines we'll be discussing. First is doctrine of essentiality, constitutional morality, because these two are to be taken by this case, doctrine of adverse possession, and fourth, doctrine of progressive realization of rights. These are the four doctrines that we'll be taking. Okay. Now, first we'll discuss the doctrine of essentiality. The doctrine of essentiality was not given under the original constitution. This doctrine was invented by a 7-judge bench of Supreme Court in the Shirur Mutt case in 1954. The court held that the term religion will cover all rituals and practices integral to a religion and took upon itself the responsibility of determining the essential and non-essential practices of a religion. It means it is not given in the original constitution what is essential, what is non-essential. In this case, it is provided that the essential practices are the important religious practices. At the same time, the courts took the responsibility of deciding which practice will be considered as essential and which will be considered as non-essential. The essential religious practice is a contentious doctrine evolved by the court to protect only such religious practices which were essential and integral to the religion. It means it is important to have a difference between essential and non-essential practices. For example, any religion that is being followed, it is not allowed to have the practice of human sacrifice, because no religion can be or should be flourishing on the basis of human sacrifices, and that is why it was considered as a non-essential practices. Similarly, we hope that in future, or we may consider this as an example, because I am not coming in between your hope and faith and belief of burning crackers. I am just taking it as an example, because you might think that I am against burning of crackers. I am just saying that in the celebration of festival Diwali, burning of crackers may be considered as a non-essential practices in perpetuity. This may also be considered. The doctrine of constitutional morality. So this doctrine provides a principled understanding for unfolding the work of governance. It specifies norms for institutions to survive and an expectation of behavior that will meet not just the text but the soul of the constitution. It also makes the governing institutions and representatives accountable. It means the Constitution of India is a written document. The constitution, it should not only be followed in letter, it should also be followed in spirit. For example, it is the constitutional morality that the constitution provides us the idea of fraternity in the preamble. Then the government should function in such a manner that how they are providing us the idea of fraternity. That is the principle of constitutional morality. It means not only the text but the soul of constitution is also to be followed, and also it makes our governing institutions accountable to the people. The constitutional morality has been used to have an emancipatory effect in the past by the apex court. The best example of this is decriminalization of homosexuality. As you all know, section 377 was decriminalized. So this was done on the basis of constitutional morality. I'll give an example for that. Morality is individual. We may consider something good, we may consider something bad. So if I believe, personally, if I believe that this should be done, this is my morality because I consider it as right. Now, in our society, homosexuality is frowned upon. Homosexuality is frowned upon, and some people use their own morality to justify homosexuality or to justify heterosexuality. But the courts, they took the idea of constitutional morality, where the constitution says, irrespective of religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth, the person should be having the equality, and they are also having the right to personal liberty under Article 21. And that is why the constitutional morality was used. But that does not force you to accept homosexuality. They are just saying that homosexuality is not a criminal offense. That is constitutional morality. It means Constitution does not consider homosexuality as immoral. And when the constitution did not consider homosexuality as immoral, they made it a decriminalized section. Okay, let us try to answer this question. Which doctrine was established by Supreme Court in the judgment which decriminalized homosexuality? Okay, very simple question. The options are: first, doctrine of essentiality; second, constitutional morality; third, doctrine of adverse possession; and fourth, doctrine of progressive realization of rights. Give your answers. B, B, B. Very good. B, D. ठीक है. A, C में से कुछ नहीं है. You don't want AC? B. Very good. Now let us have a Hoare movement. You all know what is the Hoare movement. So the answer to this question is not B. The answer to this question is D. Okay. So the answer is not B. Answer is D. So those who are considering कि अभी तो पढ़ाया था, such a simple question. So the questions UPSC that ask that are dependent upon not what you have just read, but what the UPSC is asking. Now let me explain it to you. The question is saying which doctrine was established by Supreme Court in the judgment which decriminalized homosexuality. I've already told you constitutional morality has been going on. So constitutional morality was used in the decriminalization of homosexuality case. The doctrine that was established was doctrine of progressive realization of rights. So this doctrine was established. Now what is progressive realization of rights? That the rights which has first been given in the continuing time or in now the time that is to come, these rights cannot be reduced. They cannot be narrowed. The rights can always be extended. The rights can never be narrowed. So this is the doctrine of progressive realization of rights. Is it clear? In the same thing, I'll also explain what is adverse possession. So recently in Himachal Pradesh, a case from 1967 was taken where the person accused was saying that the government, they took their land. Now government was saying that right to property is not a fundamental right and the person should not approach the Supreme Court. So in this, the Supreme Court has identified that the case was of 1967 and in 1967 right to property was a fundamental right. And when in 1967 it was a fundamental right, that means they can have the fundamental right of right to property. In the same case, Supreme Court has established that the doctrine of adverse possession should not be there. The doctrine of adverse possession should not be there. That means the government should not take away anyone's property if it is adverse to their rights. Because every individual, though do not have right to property as a fundamental right, they have it as a constitutional right under Article 300A. So the doctrine of adverse possession was used with respect to the right to property. First thing. Second thing, a question may come, right to property is a fundamental right, constitutional right, legal right, or any other right? Give me the answer. Right to property, fundamental right, legal right, constitutional right, not a right. Give me the answer. Constitutional right. Very good. So the answer is constitutional right. And now when you will go back to your books, you'll find the answer as legal right. So what you'll do, cut that legal right and write it as constitutional right. Okay. Because Article 300A is there. Very good. All of you are giving the right answer. Okay. Someone is asking a question that they give example of option D. Example is in the question itself, decriminalization of homosexuality. Delhi High Court decriminalized it. Supreme Court criminalized it. Supreme Court again decriminalized it. तो ऐसा ना हो कि दोबारा some other court they are decriminalizing it again. तो इसीलिए they are making it progressive. It means अब the person who has got the right of not being considered as a criminal for having homosexual orientation, now this right cannot be taken back. This is the example. Okay. give this answer, it means you are having very good command over a preparation. Try to give this answer. Consider the following statements under first, under Article 137 of the Constitution, the Supreme Court has the power to review its judgment. The Supreme Court has the power to review any of its judgment or orders. First statement. Second, pardoning power of president is out of judicial review. Which of the following statements is or are correct? It is one only, two only, both, none. Now we are discussing review petitions. Under Article 137 of the Constitution, Supreme Court has the power to review any of its judgment or orders. Okay? Under the Article 137, Supreme Court has the power to review any of its judgments or orders. Second, let us discuss that they have only this power to correct a patent error. They only have this power to correct the patent error, and they do not take any other mistakes in rather to that. It means it is not an appeal. It is just it is not an appeal in any way. It is only used to correct any patent error that was there in the judgment. Now, it does not allow them to take a fresh stock of the case, but only to correct errors. Okay. According to the Supreme Court rules, and patent error means that is very, very easily visible. For example, if in a judgment, it is considered that Delhi is in UP, so it is a patent error that these are two different geographical locations. So in that case, you can file for a review petition. So understand, according to the Supreme Court rules and Civil Procedure Code, any person aggrieved by a ruling can seek a review. Okay, any person can seek a review. So there is no need for locus standi, but that review has to be taken within the 30 days, or if the court accepts that the time period of 30 days can also be extended. Okay. It needs to be noted that court does not entertain every review petition. It means it is the discretion of the courts to accept any review petition or to reject it. The Supreme Court has laid down 3 grounds on the basis of which a review of a verdict has to be delivered. First, the discovery of new and important matter or evidence. It means a new matter has come on the basis of which there is to be a review that is needed. Second, and a mistake or error that is very apparent that has happened. And third, if any of the above reason or any reason related to the above 2 reasons, it can also be taken. So on the 3 grounds, review petition can be filed. Now, review petition is to be heard only by the same combination of judges that had reviewed the previous order. So the same judges will be taking that review petition. The review petition are ordinarily to be entertained without oral arguments and only through circulation. It means oral arguments will not be taken. So there is no need to have tariq pe tariq in this review petition. However, in exceptional cases, the courts may hear courts may allow an oral hearing. This can be done if the courts agree to it. And in the year 2014, the courts has made very clear that the review petition of any death penalty, it will be taken in an open court by a bench of 3 judges. Okay? So they have made it very, very clear. The review petitions are also heard by the same combination of judges who delivered the original order. Now, what is curative petition? The concept of curative petition is not given in the Constitution. This was evolved through Rupa Ashok Hurra versus Ashok Hurra case. So this is not the part of original Constitution. Rather, it is given in order to have a final way of justice through the courts. So this is supported by Article 137 along with Article 145, where the Supreme Court has the power to review its judgment. Such petitions need to be filed within 30 days from the date of judgment or order. Okay. Curative petition can only be filed when all the means have been exhausted. When all the means are exhausted, then only a curative petition may be filed. It is only to be accepted when there is a violation of the principles of natural justice. So it is only to be considered when there is a violation of the principles of natural justice. It is rare, very rarely it is taken. A curative petition is generally undertaken by the three senior most judges and the judges who have delivered the judgment. So it is not necessary the same bench will be taking. And if the three senior most judges, they agree to take the petition, then only that petition will be taken. And there can be an idea of amicus curiae, that is the friend of the court, in order to ensure that the verdict or the judgment is according to the principles of natural justice. Okay, this is there in the curative petition, and it is generally decided within the chambers. There is no open hearing. However, there is always a scope to have an open hearing. So this is about curative petition. Now let us take that question. Now what is the answer? Give your answers again. A. 137 gives the power to the Supreme Court to review its judgment. Second, pardoning power of president is not out of judicial review. It is under judicial review. In one of my videos, I have already clearly provided it, the pardoning power of the president. Go through the YouTube channel. You will find a video regarding the pardoning power of the president. Okay. So the answer to this is A. The Kehar Singh judgment, it provides the power of judicial review. Thank you very much and stay safe. If you have any doubts, we are open to your doubts after this class also. And stay safe and keep good care, take good care of yourself. And also for any updates, join our Telegram channel, which is with the name of EduBridge IAS, where you will get our regular updates. Thank you very much. And we are soon coming with a very new initiative that will surprise you and that will be beneficial for you. So wait for it. I'm just trying to bring some suspense to it. So we are bringing something innovative. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.